Ever look in the mirror and think, ugh, why can't I just feel better about my body? You're not alone. But what if that inner criticism wasn't the enemy, but a clue? What if those thoughts were actually your body's way of asking for something deeper? Today's conversation is going to flip the script on everything you thought you knew about body image and show you a completely different way forward. Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Sukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a busy life. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit funny, and a little bit revolutionary. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome back to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruth Sukup, and I am the founder of Thinlicious and the creator of the Thin Adapted System. And today we're chatting with Deb Schachter, a seasoned therapist and one of Boston's top experts in body image and eating disorder recovery. With over 30 years of experience, Deb brings a powerful mix of mindfulness, curiosity, and deep compassion to her work, helping women not just fix how they feel about their bodies, but understand why those feelings are showing up in the first place. She's also the co-author of the new book, Body Image Inside Out. And believe me, what she shares today is something every woman needs to hear. I cannot wait for you to listen in. So let's get right to it. Deb, thanks so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Likewise.
Yeah. So let's just start with the basic question I like to start with everyone. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you get to be doing what you are now?
Yeah, it's always such an interesting thing to answer. So I'm going to orient around my practice, but really, part of what I feel so passionate about is working with body image specifically. So my name is Deb Schachter. I have a private practice in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have been doing individual group work for about 30 years. And about 20 years ago, I made a wonderful friend, and we happened to start talking about body image in a really different way than either of us had ever talked about it before. And we started running workshops. So we've been running those for about 20 years now. And in 2019, I had run one independently because at that time my co-author Whitney had had kids and was caught up in some other things. And I ran one on my own, and I kind of circled back to her and I said, I think we got to put this in a book. And so we embarked on a book, and 5 years later, here we are. So it was quite a journey, and we learned so much through the writing, so much more. I mean, I've always felt so passionate about body image, but the book taught me so much in really finding language for how to do this work and how to think about how to understand what body image work really looks like. So, yeah.
That's amazing. There is nothing that will make you question your self-worth, I feel like, more than writing a book.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say the body image, but
it
yeah. Oh, excruciating. Excruciating.
Yeah,
it's been fascinating, and especially co-writing because we have very different backgrounds. Whitney's Olympic world champion rower and an athlete, and I've been in sort of the therapy, bubble. And so she's been much more in the athletic world. So just for each of us, I think, but, like you said, it challenges your self-worth. And at the same time, when we wrote the book, we felt really clear we wanted it to really be for everyone because everyone lives in a body and everybody has feelings about it. And so that was part of what got me excited about writing the book was that it wasn't just an eating disorder book. Not that that's not incredibly important, but that there are so few places that we know how to talk about body image or that we've been taught to talk about body image in a way that feels connected or productive or, we really try and bring a lot of levity and humor to it. It's so hard to find places to do that. So we really wanted to create a space where people could do that in a really different kind of way.
I love that. I love that. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about your methodology or what you sort of stumbled upon
Yeah.
when you were working together and how that works.
Yeah, yeah. So the name of the book is Body Image Inside Out. Originally, we called the workshops The Body Self, and sort of the origins of it are really based in the friendship that Whitney and I had, because so early we both were in recovery ourselves from eating disorders and really were in, very stable places in terms of our recovery. But we sort of felt like we both had hit kind of a glass ceiling with body image, that there's sort of like, I think to this day, I think there's sort of this assumption like you just tolerate it, you fix it or you tolerate it. And so we really got curious about that. And, I think what just happened organically is A, that it was so fun to be able to, and who would think of it as fun, but to talk about body image with somebody else in a safe way that felt more um, just kind of like free almost. It was sort of like we just started to share these stories and the ways that we thought about our bodies in a way that just felt sort of natural. And I think from that we just realized like how much more could really come out when you create that kind of environment where there's that kind of safety, maybe when it isn't even therapy in a way, right? Where it's not like I should be saying this or thinking this. It was just kind of these goofy stories that we had and names that we had come up with for our various, body parts or phases of our life or and so, what started as that really morphed into not only the safety, but also the clarity that we started to notice both, I think, for each other and for ourselves, that our body image got louder at different times. And that was really interesting. So starting to really track the whys and the whens of that, even though, that may last a day, a week, a month, a decade, but really getting curious about where life and body image intersect, and that really felt like an untapped kind of thing to explore. And that's where we really started getting curious. And then what happened when we wrote the book, which was really kind of blew both of our minds, was the chapter that we didn't know existed, which was body image and relationships, and really looking at how our body image is informed by our relational life, both in terms of, our past, our families of origin, but really also thinking about in our day to day, why is it sometimes when we wake up in the morning we feel fine and then all of a sudden we feel like our pants are too tight and we need to go home and put on a burlap sack? Something's happened and it's relational. 99% of the time it's relational. It could be, oh my god, I'm going to my reunion, or I just saw my mother-in-law. It could be anything, but there's something relational that's happening. And once we kind of aha'd that when we were writing, we sort of thought, oh, game changer. This is where the work is helping people really start to get curious about that interplay between their relationships and their body image and those spikes and valleys.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So have you found, you've worked with all these different clients. Have you found that there's certain correlations for certain things? Are there patterns that happen, or does it look totally different for everyone?
It's such a great question. I think it is different for everyone in that, we talk about how we help people sort of translate their body image for their unique story. But the themes that I think really again got sort of captured in this chapter that we were trying to articulate to your point, there's nothing makes you more humble. That these are things I've thought about, but to put into words, okay, we actually we don't start worrying about our body. We may start worrying about our bodies when we're, preteen or teen or whatever. But our first relational mirrors are our parents, our caregivers. So there's all kinds of information. It may be body image related or body related. You're so athletic, you have your mother's thighs, whatever. But it can also be, just the ways we experience, how we experience whether we are seen and understood, and whether people are curious about us, how we connect to people, and how they kind of give us messages around how we can be accepted by them or loved by them. So really what's become our kind of quintessential workshop is looking at those stories, looking at each of our unique stories, but those patterns around that early mirroring, and how then as we move into our adult lives, when there may be repetitions of some of that early mirroring. So that could be, if we were really, we always felt like we needed to be the funny one in our family, or we were we had an ill sibling, so we were the ones that kept our needs really small. How those may show up in our adult relationships, and how often there are body image bumps that happen in those places
Yeah.
because we're trying to manage some of the feelings that we don't even realize we're trying to manage through body image or through, our sense of our body and how it could be better or make the relationship somehow improved.
Huh. So what does that look like for you in your personal story and your personal journey? Like where did you kind of start and then
Yeah.
through? Like let's
That's
dig
such
into
good
it.
questions. Yeah. So, I guess what I would say is, and I didn't figure this out until when we did actually our launch, someone asked this question, but it was really helpful for me is I think for so many of my clients, and I think for so many women for sure and people in general, we live in very sensitive bodies. We take in so much. Our body is the longest relationship will ever have. So there's so much sensation that happens in there. And I think for me, and I definitely didn't know this at the time, I live in a very highly sensitive body. So when I started to feel big things, first they felt like a lot or too much, and I don't think, in my family I was necessarily taught how to manage some of those big feelings. And what we often find, to get back to your question about patterns, is that often big feelings come with big sensations, and then those sensations can kind of start to feel like our body is changing because we don't exactly understand what's happening when we're feeling all of this stuff, right? It's all happening in split seconds, and all of a sudden, a sort of like gurgliness in our belly, all of a sudden we're like, oh, my belly feels bigger, right? There are all these things that happen often without even, our own interpretation. They just sort of evolve within us as these moments are happening. So for me, I think being focused on my body and my body image was a way to manage a lot of the big sensations that I didn't know how else to discharge or process or metabolize.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I think I always knew that, but it wasn't until we wrote the chapter where I really got clear around the sort of coupling of emotions and sensations and what we think about our bodies that I was thinking, oh, that's what I was doing that whole time. Some of
Yeah.
it was about, looking right and having a good butt and whatever. But so much of it was about all of the things that were happening inside me that I didn't know how else to manage. And
Yeah.
so that's really become it's probably my favorite part of the whole book is getting people and the work is getting people back to the sensations. And it's something I think about all the time because for the most part, I'd say, my body image is relatively steady, but my body sensations now, I'm so much more aware of, and I have so much more fluctuation because I think my body really senses into so much of what I feel every day. So it doesn't move into the body as much for me. I mean, it doesn't move into body image, and at this point, my body is going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of peace with that, but in terms of the big feelings, that feels so important. So for me, it shows up more now in terms of sensations and tightness and, intention and different ways that I've learned to really understand that so much of my emotional life is housed in my body experience. So that was a
Yeah.
long-winded answer, but I hope that made
Oh,
sense.
really interesting. There's so much that comes up for me. I mean, there's so much mindfulness that you're speaking to of just learning how to sit with those feelings. And I've gone through a lot of therapies, so I can relate
Yeah.
to that. But yeah, I mean, a couple of things that come out of it for me is number one, like don't you find that you learn what you teach, right? Like what you need to learn is
Oh my
what you
God,
end
a
up teaching.
thousand
I
percent.
feel that
Yeah.
so much. And I have a second business that is where I teach online business owners how to
Mm.
successful businesses. And I always find that I never really understand a concept until I teach it, right? A system, a concept, whatever I'm teaching,
Yeah.
it never really gels for me until I start going, okay, how am I going to teach this to somebody else?
Exactly. Totally. Totally. And it was so cool. That's what was so humbling and amazing about writing the book was that I've been doing this for 30 years, but to try and really capture in words, whoa, like I've been talking about ways that the language I use is we shape shift in our families before we're trying to change our shape, right? We're already like, if I'm again, the quiet one, the accommodating one, the funny one, we're already shape shifting. And then that moves into this whole other space of like, oh, if I change my body, how might that actually change these dynamics? All of that, I'd use that language, but I'd never hash that all out. And now we use in the workshops, we use these little puzzle pieces and we have everyone
Mm,
write words on them and all this cool stuff that we never would have known to do, right? So exactly what you
yeah.
said, it's so cool to actually like flesh it out. It's really
and
cool.
to realize it. I mean, just even everything that you were saying about just kind of growing up in your body and think and the way that you process things, right? And I think back to my childhood and just the stuff that happened, and then in high school I did develop an eating disorder, but it was so related to, it had nothing to do with food. It was everything to do with control and feeling out of control with my family situation and the dynamics, and my mom, she was mentally ill, and so there was a lot of instability, and there was just like so much craziness, and that was like my thing to like
Totally.
cling to. And I see it so much now. You look back and and like I said, lots of therapy, but you go back and kind of like now realize that those same things come up. And even what you were saying about like, oh, I was always
Exactly.
the clumsy one, I was so tall and awkward, and those were the words that people would use to describe me, right? Like so gangly and awkward, and I always felt like this, like I was a head taller than everybody else. And that those things always came back later, especially when I gained a lot of weight and became larger, right? And so not only did I already feel bigger than everyone, now I was overweight and felt like this giant uh, person that was
Yeah.
around, like so always in. And then I felt like everybody around me was tiny, and I didn't, and that was always what would come up to me, right? Like for me was,
Hmm.
why am I so big and everybody else is so tiny? And it's just, you
Totally.
kind of, and then those are the moments of insecurity that come back over and over again. So how do you
Absolutely.
like, where do you go with all of this to like move past it?
In my own life or with my clients?
With both. You
Yeah.
can talk about yourself, you can
Oh,
talk about your
yeah.
clients, you can
I
tell me
mean,
all
I
the things.
think, yeah. So what I would say is, really the way that the book is laid out is kind of, I think, the way we, and again, like you said, the challenge of like, whoa, this is actually how we do this work with people, but is this idea that, we really start to develop a relationship with our body image. And we call it couples therapy for you and your body image, because there's so much to be learned there that really, again, we often think we are our body image, whatever it says, when in fact we're really not. There's a whole other language and story that's going there, but it's really important, and we're going to miss it if we don't lean in. So, we have what we call the three muscles, where that one of them is mindful awareness, where we're really having people just start to track that, noticing like, oh, my body image is getting louder. And that's really different to say, God, I look like crap in these pants, I should just wear sweatpants for the rest of my life, is very different than, wow, my body image is really loud, I'm saying really nasty things about myself as I put my pants on. Those are really different. So that's one of the muscles. That's like our core, that's where you start, is just tracking and noticing these ebbs and flows. And then we move into curiosity. So we have people really start to think about what's happening, like sort of what I said with Whitney and I back in the day, what's happening in my life that might be kicking up my body image. I might be activating some of these parts of me. Because, like you said, there's a lot of, one of our subtitles is called The Hope and Self-Hate. There's a reason that these thoughts get louder, because in some way they think if they change us, we'll feel differently. So
Mm,
whether if I have this body part, I'll feel, we call that inside curiosity. So it's like, what fantasy, if I had those legs, what would my body be like? And then we have outside curiosity, which is sort of what's happening in my life that might be giving me the sense that there's something wrong with me, and if I fix it, it'll be better. So really delving into that. And then our last muscle is compassion, which is really like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Not just, oh, this sucks, this is so hard to have this body image language just be so cruel, but also, this makes so much sense that if there's hope in hating myself, no wonder it gets loud. Oh my gosh, that's why there's 20 pairs of pants on my floor and I'm crying, Like there's something really big happening here. It's not just about my pants. So we do a lot of that, and we have what we call a rotary, which we actually have people map kind of where they are in that process and learning how to actually shift from just the self-hate into mindful awareness, curiosity, and compassion, and trying to really build those muscles, just like any muscle in the body. And then we sort of build that out into all this relational stuff, and really break down sort of what were our early mirrors. So in your story, right? Okay, so if your mom was mentally ill, what beliefs did you have about who you needed to be to feel connected? Because at the end of the day, that's all of our currency, right? So whatever
mhm.
that meant, and then really tracking that over time. So originally I learned to fill in the blank, how did that play out? How does that show out now? Who am I around? And where does that get activated? Really tracking that relational piece.
Mhm.
And then the last few chapters of the book are really looking at things like jealousy, really like who are we jealous of and why, really exploring that, which is really fun and interesting, and not what people think it will be, like actually really digging in again. Like if I had Jennifer Aniston's arms, my life would be great. So let's talk about that, right? All right.
Yeah.
There's a life attached to those arms. So let's learn about that. So we do jealousy. We talk about clothing. We have a whole chapter on clothing, which is super fun to write and wild. Because again, I've had 30 years of stories about weddings and, proms and, so many feelings about clothing. And then really ultimately, where we wrap is this idea of, okay, now that you've learned all this, now that you've learned more about the ways that your body image is trying to help you instead of torture you, what do you really need? So when you're around your mother-in-law or whatever, fill in the blank, and she makes me feel really, small and unimportant, what do you need? Maybe it's a phone call that you set up with your best friend after. Maybe it's your favorite yoga class. Starting to figure out all the ways that body image is trying to help. And then how do we really resource the parts of us that really need whatever our body image is desperately trying to help by thinking if we change our body, we'll feel better.
Yeah.
So that was
So,
my summary of the book.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like so helpful. But do you feel like by the end, it's something where you feel like your body image is cured, or is it not something that you need to cure?
Great.
Is it?
Awesome question. It's one of my favorites. So when we wrote the book, or the publisher wanted us to do a subtitle, so we picked something like I forget what it was originally, but they said how you heal body image, and we were like, sorry, pal, doesn't work that way. Otherwise, I would not have a job. So what we really believe is that it's a practice. That again, we all have bodies and we all have feelings about them. So it's much more about, just like yoga practice or any yoga meditation, it's, oh, my body image is getting louder. What's
Mhm.
happening? Getting more skillful at practicing those other things, because it's going to. I mean, not only obviously because we live in this culture, but just because it's part of how we've oriented ourselves. And, even if people don't have, heavy duty eating disorders or terrible body image, we have all kinds of anecdotes where people are just like, I can't leave the house. I can't figure out what to wear. And it's often because there's something really, emotionally charged that's happening. And it could be,
Mhm.
we have a great story of a client of Whitney's who was just going to a funeral of a friend's son. And it's like, what do you wear when your friend has lost their child? Like, of course, it has nothing to do with what she wears, but somehow that became the thing. Like, it was just a good example of like ways that life and how intense it can be can play out in these ways. So it's all
Yeah.
about just really, really continuing to cultivate that curiosity and to bring that more in the world with our kids, our clients, our loved ones.
Yeah.
My husband, I always love it when he's like, I think we call it a BIM, which is a bad body image moment. That's our kind of short name for that, to just keep it really neutral. And I love when he'll be like, I think I'm having a BIM, which is obviously for him just about like not finding the right pants for the presentation when he's really nervous and, he's put on some weight in the winter. But it's great that then he's like, that's what's happening, right? Instead of just hating
It
on
gives you
himself.
language to talk about it.
Exactly.
which is so
Exactly.
which is so important, and I love that too, because it takes away the all or nothing thinking, which is so part of just that, the whole problem, right? Is
Right.
it's either or, it's
Exactly.
all or nothing.
Hate yourself or fix yourself. And those are
Yes,
both impossible.
exactly, it's all a journey, it's all a process. And
Yeah.
when you can take that, like, need, like, I've fallen off the wagon and now I've screwed up and now I might as
Right.
well quit mentality away, then it allows you to keep going, right? And you just pick yourself up. You just, okay, what's happening right now. Now let's move on. This is
Exactly.
not going to be happening forever. And I really, really,
Exactly.
I like that
Exactly. And
philosophy.
we talk so much about resonance. That's really a big piece of the resourcing, is learning more about what our one of my favorite quotes is Mary Oliver that we have in there, which is love the soft animal body, your soft animal body love what it loves. So it's really that idea, like when we are really listening to our body, it does have that wisdom. It does know when we want to leave the party or quit the job or put on sweatpants. It knows what we need. And so learning more just to listen is, and we're not socialized around that, right? We're socialized
Right.
around so much hustle culture and all of that. So so it's just a different way to be in relationship with your
Yeah,
body image.
I love that. So why do you think self-compassion is so difficult for people to like really just kind of allow your body to be, right? To like be at peace with
Yeah.
it? Why do you think that's so hard? Why are we so hard on ourselves as women? And
Yeah, I
where
mean,
does
I think
that
it's a
come from?
great,
And
yeah, I think it's an awesome question. I mean, I think, I think that we're so oriented around fixing, we're just really good at it. I think as women, especially, that's, one of our strengths generally is seeing something, finding the through way through messes is sort of, I think, say like a superhero skill kind of, right? Superpower. And I think, we're given the message that if we do it well, we're going to feel better, we're going to be more connected, we're going to be loved, we're going to be accepted. So I think it's really hard to trust that if we really move through the world in more of our own alignment, that even though you and I know that those are the kind of people we want to have around, that we're going to have the people who we really need around us and really show up, whether that's in the shape of our bodies or in how much we do or don't do in our days, really trusting that if we're kind of the right size for us, whatever that means, if we show up authentically, that we're gonna, the people are gonna really connect to us and love us. And so I think there's a lot of practice there around that process of really,
Mhm.
and it's part of why we love the workshop so much, is being in a room full of people that have all um, as one of my clients once said, like they've all been people pleasers and shapeshifters. They've all been so oriented around the other. And so to be together and just, I mean, run a lot of groups too. And I just love them just talking about all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I guess I'd add is just that, the irony is we're told how we're supposed to look, but we also feel a lot of shame about hating ourselves. Like we're
Mhm.
sort of taught to hate ourselves, but we're
Yes.
also not supposed to feel that. So
We're
it gets
taught about
really. Exactly. So it's really dicey. So we talk a lot in the book about really like having a lot of compassion for the shame because we think we always say body image, negative body image happens in isolation and is healed in connection. That so much of this happens in our own shadows. So it really is very different again to come forth and say we're all thinking these things, we're all saying these things, we're all worried about the same things,
it.
but
Mhm.
how do we trust that there's a reason why this is happening? So I think that can also really help remove some of the pathology that can get layered in there, like, oh, you hate yourself, you need to, again, you should love yourself. So like there's some really good reasons you don't, and how do we really help you learn how to do that in a more kind of aligned way instead of some kind of woo-woo way that isn't really addressing kind of where the hurt is.
I can see where that would be so powerful to finally have the space to talk about it openly, where because there is, I think, a lot of shame. I think about even like my own
Totally.
struggle with my weight and on in front of the camera and doing all these things. I was writing books and
Yeah,
running my business and not ever sharing anything about my weight. And even though it was like an everyday thing, right? To just
totally.
feel so uncomfortable and ashamed and all the stuff that I couldn't talk about or couldn't really share. And now I talk about it. And obviously, because I've
Yeah,
become a whole brand for me, but it's so freeing to be able to finally talk about like, no, I actually felt terrible about myself. It looked like I was doing great on the surface, but I
exactly.
actually felt terrible about myself. And it's so funny too when I think about what you said, like all that time that I struggled, I wasn't, it wasn't until I was finally in alignment, until it finally wasn't about just lose like the quick fix or losing the weight for me, where it was more about, okay, how am I going to heal my body and how am I going to nurture my body and
Totally.
where am I going to go from here? And like that process was just so different. So are your workshops
Exactly.
like one day or are they like over an extended amount of time? How do
Yeah,
you
that's an awesome question. So they are currently one day. We have a fantasy someday of doing more of like a
retreat?
retreat somewhere. Yeah, that would be really fun. We've looked at a couple spaces. So what we're really excited about, so we do obviously workshops. We also are doing this fall, we're doing a training for clinicians, which we're super excited about. So that'll be for, I mean, we really want anyone to be there, therapists, nutritionists, PTs. I mean, we get so many requests from either folks that aren't in the eating disorder or body image world or in the medical community that they're, my Pilates teacher, like they're all sort of saying, how do we address this when people talk about it? And how do we start to create new language? So anyway, we're doing a big training in the fall, one in person in Boston and then one virtually. That's all that stuff is on our website. And then we also do, we don't have one on the calendar yet, but I'm sure we'll be doing more workshops as well. And hopefully we're going to also, now that we're sort of out of the launch of the book, more trainings that people can also just like watch our shtick and kind of learn a little bit more and do their own version of it in their own time.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
anything else before we wrap up? Anything else we have to know that we didn't cover?
I don't
I kind
think
of
so.
went off script. I told you I was going to. I
No,
always
I'm so
do.
glad you did. And I feel like I did. I mean, I never know exactly what's going to come out of my mouth, but I'm glad. I really I wanted to talk about the muscles because I think sometimes people are like, "Oh my God, this is so layered and family and blah." But that basic stuff, really learning how to start to track and notice your body image getting louder and quieter, and then be practicing just some curiosity about what else is happening in my greater context, what might be triggering me. I think those are some really great places to start. So I always just like to say to people, like, the muscles are a great place to start.
I love that. And so it's
Yeah.
so simple. And yet I don't think we always think about like how powerful it is to just stop, pause, and pay attention.
Yeah.
What's going on right now? What's going on
Right. And to
right
remove the
now?
judgment, right? Because it's like,
Yes, without judgment.
I feel so, I feel so disgusting, blah, 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 instead of like, wow. The way that Whitney describes it, which I always love, is like it's like a newspaper reporter. Like you're just giving a weather report. Like body image is loud, saying nasty things. Great. Okay, let's start there. That's really good information.
I love that language. Just
Mm.
saying it's really loud right now. It's
Yeah.
really loud in here, body.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of
I love
chatter
it.
going on.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Can tell us where we can find more about you, find the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the things, and of course we'll link to them in the show notes as well.
That'd be fantastic. So the book itself is called Body Image Inside Out. You can find it wherever books are sold, including Amazon, of course, and Barnes and Noble. And then we're bodyimageInsideOut.com is our website. And we have all of our workshops are on there. Our story is on there. And if people are interested in having us do consultations or trainings for folks, we love doing that. And then we're on Instagram. We're Body Image Inside Out at at Instagram, whatever. That's our handle. Yeah. So those are the biggies. And if people have questions, we're always happy to chat. And Whitney works more kind of in the corporate realm. She actually works with female executives as a coach and consultant. So it's really cool to see her do this work in a less less eating disorder orientation, but really a lot of women in the corporate world, so many parallels and really, really helpful tools there too. So
Amazing. Well, Deb, thank you so
yeah,
much for sharing all
thank
this
you so
today.
much.
It
This
was
was a
so interesting.
delight.
Yes, it was a delight. I love that word. So thank you so much. And everybody go check out Deb's website and it will all be in the show notes. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, guys, that about does it for this episode. Remember that you'll find the link to Deb's book, Body Image Inside Out, along with all the other resources we talked about in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. And if you know someone else who's ever struggled with their body image, which, let's be honest, is most of us, please be sure to send this episode their way. Then be sure to subscribe to the podcast to be notified of future episodes. And I'll see you back here for another new episode very soon.